like shopping to finance a car? Do you like insuring a car? Do you like stopping to buy gas and pumping gas? Do you like looking for a parking spot and then walking from the parking lot? Do you really like spending your time driving the car, getting it washed? Most people say, oh, those are just things I have to put up with to have the freedom to go where I want to. This new DNA gives us a chance to deliver a totally new experience that takes all those negatives out of it and handle all these side effects that we're concerned with.
So, Alex, does your sense of the future of self-driving cars match his sort of global redefinition of what life with a driverless car would be?
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting to see that it's not just people like Larry Burns who have left places like GM to work with the Google and Uber types. It's the big automakers themselves are saying that this technology is finally on the cusp of happening, and it's time to really rethink how we move around.
But they weren't, the big automakers were not first out of the box. Weren't they being reactive to these more innovative, more nimble companies in doing so?
Yes and no. They would certainly say no. Anytime you talk to GM or Ford, you're like, well, this is pretty new to you. And they say, well, hey, we were in the DARPA Grand Challenges back in the early 2000s where a lot of this work started. But I think you have to give a lot of credit to Google in particular for putting a fire under them in really advancing the idea of a fully autonomous.
Are all the driverless cars on the roads today just experimental?
Yeah, basically. There are a couple, Uber is doing its thing in Pittsburgh and in Arizona where it's actually picking up passengers, but it's still very much an experimental car. It's got engineers up front, and they're trying to figure out how well all this is working and how to really make it work.
Back in 2010, GM unveiled a concept car. What's it called? The ENV? Yes. Autonomous electric smart car for urban environments, right? And so let's pick up my interview with Larry Burns and see what he tells us about that.
We team up with Segway, and we developed a vehicle called ENV, ENV for Electrically Networked Vehicle, and that was the start of the Shanghai World Expo. So this is a two-person balance machine, and the developers of that at Segway took their transporter, widened it, and put more power in it. And they went to Cracker Barrel and bought a rocking gliding chair, mounted it on there, put a roll cage around it, and in 6 weeks they had this thing running. And Rick Wagner and I are driving it around in a warehouse in New Hampshire in the middle of the winter. It was amazing, how fast they put it together. So we showcased this whole vision at the Shanghai World Expo. And what's exciting...
When I see what they call the smart car on the road, I think of that as a two-seater car.
Two-seater.
Yeah, leave off all the rest of what you don't need or use.
And so because it only weighed 750 pounds, you've got...
We're only thinking parking. We're not thinking anything else.
And if the New Yorker shared it, it would never get parked, because when that New Yorker gets out of that car, it goes and picks up someone else. It doesn't go park. Yeah. So what you want to do, if you're going to have a vehicle moving around, you'd like to have it utilized 75% of the time, not 5% of the time.
Which, in all fairness, is what New York City taxis
That's what they do.
That in principle, it captures some of this fact.
The problem with the taxi, though, is they have 0.6 of a mile driven searching to pick up their next person for every mile they drive with a person in it. If you have a shared vehicle system and you use wireless connectivity communications to connect vehicles with customers like Uber does, you can take that 0.6 of a mile down to 0.05 miles, 5/100ths of a mile.
So you did the calculation.
We did the calculations, and we are convinced that we have a mobility system that's evolving based on driverless shared vehicles that are tailored to two people that can take the out-of-pocket cost of traveling and owning an automobile plus parking of 75 cents a mile. We can take that below 20 cents a mile and give you your time back. If you make median income in the United States, which is $25 an hour, that's the 50th percentile income, and you move at 25 miles an hour, your time is worth $1 a mile. So we're in a world of $1.
You even calculated that?
Yes.
Is there anything you don't calculate?
No, that's what engineers do. Neil, we're in a world of $1.75 a mile for the typical car owner, dropping to 25 cents. Americans travel 3 trillion miles a year. If you can save just 10
trillion?
10 cents.
That's half a light year.
10 cents on 3 trillion. Well, you would know that. Yeah.
I got that one. 3 trillion miles is half a light year.
10 cents on 3 trillion miles a year.
A couple dollars.
It's $300 billion.
Oh,
I just love that you will take driving a car here on Earth and find a way to relate it to the cosmos.
so Alex, I think most people who are newbies in this are thinking, I will buy and own a self-driving car. They're not thinking that the car gets shared. So where would you agree with this vision that this is where it's going to, how it's going to come to us out of the box, or is there some adjustment pains, do you think, we'll have to go through?
Absolutely. I think when you're talking about full autonomy, the car that's shared, that you never drive, the Google Pod car that doesn't even have a steering wheel or pedals, that car is going to be shared. You get that vision of shared autonomy, which works, and part of that is a technical limitation of these cars is people think that within 3-4 years they can make a fully self-driving car, but not one that can drive anywhere or handle any conditions. They think that you start by making a car whose capability is like this, but that can only drive in this big a space. That's why Google's testing in certain cities. That's why Uber is testing in downtown Pittsburgh and slowly expanding from there. So the shared thing in set geographic areas really makes sense.
So is this NV concept car, is that still alive? Because he's recalling that from back in 2010. I presume we've moved beyond that by now. Is that correct?
I think we're beyond that. And when GM talks about self-driving cars, what they're using to test that technology right now is the new Chevy Bolt, the Bolt EV. That's the first electric car that can do 200 miles on a single range, and it costs around like $35,000.
The Bolt or the Volt?
The Bolt with a B.
Bolt.
Yes.
Bolt.
Like the dog.
Like the dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why they changed the name. They always say Bolt EV right now, because I feel like maybe they made a mistake naming their cars almost the same exact
Wait,
thing.
so now you're right, they made a mistake because I'm still confused. Is the Volt still around? The V Volt? Is that still
The
around?
V-Volt is still around. They actually just put out a new version of it last year. It's really good.
Oh, okay.
I just think it's great. We have two leading electric cars named after physicists.
Yes.
Okay, there's Alexandra Volta,
Volta.
after whom we named this unit of electromagnetic force, right? I mean, electromagnetic potential, the Volt. And then you have, of course, the Tesla,
Right.
Nikola Tesla. That's just cool.
It's cool.
I just think we get physicists on cars. This is good.
It's very cool.
There are even electric trucks called Nikola. There's
The
an
Nikola.
electric truck company called Nikola.
Excellent.
Wow.
Again, his first name and his last
That's
name.
right.
His middle name, his mama's name. So let's rejoin my interview with Larry Burns. So we're going to talk about the economic implications and consequences of this shift in our culture, really, and who's going to have a job and who's not. Let's check it out.
It has the potential to not only impact the automobile industry, but the energy industry, the insurance industry, the retail industry, and how we consume food, how we educate ourselves and others. And it's pretty exciting. Is this all a rosy story? No. There's a lot of jobs tied to these industries that I've talked about. And what's the economic implications of suddenly not needing drivers and vehicles? And a huge number of jobs are tied to that. So just like the future of innovation always has been, there's going to be new solutions. They're going to be adopted. The world's going to have to change. Think if you were in the horse industry back before the car was invented, and you grew hay, or you did horseshoes, or you had barns, or you cleaned up after horses, and the horseless carriage comes along and displaces all of that industry. And we're entering into
That's the proverbial buggy whip.
Yeah.
Do you make buggy whips anymore? Is it a place in the catalog to buy? No.
Yeah.
But what impressed me 110 years ago was how rapidly
Yes.
we transitioned from horses to horseless carriages, because we used horses for 10,000 years.
Yes.
If there's anything that would have, should have, could have had inertia to never change, it would be the horses.
1886, Carl Benz gets the patent. 1903, Horatio Jackson drives across the United States. By the early 1900s, Henry Ford hit on the assembly line concept. And then by the 19-teens, he's building a car that his workers can afford to buy.
So
and they're off and running.
in 30 years, an entire industry basically goes obsolete.
Yes.
So going forward, do you see this autonomous car transition happening as rapidly as was the transition to cars in the first place?
Absolutely. I think it's going to happen very fast. I think the biggest risk incumbent companies in this industry can make is to assume it's going to take longer than it's actually going to take.
Yeah. So, Alex, it seems to me that a change can happen not simply because you have good PR people, but because it has significant economic benefit to those who want to make the change. And then you make the change overnight. It's a business calculation. But the people who would lose their jobs,
Right.
how does this? Are you ready for that? What in your column? Have you thought about this? How to transition this entire community of people? I heard yesterday that nearly 10% of all jobs are drivers.
Right.
People drive trucks, taxis,
Trains.
most of them are men.
Right.
But trains, yeah, most of them are men
Mhm.
and gone. So how do you deal with this?
That's not really clear yet, but it is a lot of
I was going to
jobs.
say that's not my problem.
Wouldn't that have been great if Alex would have been like, Neil, we here at Wired don't give a damn about blue collar workers. That's their problem.
The way you began that sentence, I was certain it was going to go there.
Oh, that's
Go on.
great. No, sorry, Alex.
Yeah, go on.
There's something like 3 million truckers in the United States. And in one sense, it's a really good job because it's one of the few jobs that can make you good money without anything more than a high school diploma and a commercial driver's license. And it is going to be stressful on a large part of the economy when those jobs start going away. I think that'll happen gradually. And if you talk to people like Daimler and Volvo, the companies that also make trucks, and they're all working on autonomous trucks because they see really great economic benefits there almost right away. But it's not really clear what's going to happen to those workers. I think, like Larry said, it's something that's happened throughout time, and it's just growing pains.
Yeah, the difference though is there, like when you said buggy whips when you were in your interview, the thing is that buggy whips found a home in the dominatrix industry. That will not happen with drivers. If you have autonomous vehicles, there is no need for a driver anywhere. So
When we come back, we're going to tackle issues like traffic and accidents and fatalities and other things that a self-driving car might get involved in. And who are you going to call when that happens? On Star Talk when we return. Welcome back to Star Talk. I'm Neil deGrasse Tyson. Chuck Nice, sitting right to my left.
right there.
You wearing an Einstein T-shirt today.
I am.
You feeling some Einstein?
It's my spirit animal.
He's your spirit advisor. Oh, your spirit.
It's my spirit animal. Primates are animals.
Okay, that's a beautiful thing. We're featuring my interview with Larry Burns, who is a self-driving car consultant
Fascinating.
for Google, has deep history in the automotive industry.
Mhm.
He's an engineer, so he's got the engineer sense of the world where they calculate everything. And I had to ask him, he came by my office several months ago, and so we're slotting in the clips from that interview. So I had to ask him about accidents and what could lead to fatalities when nobody's behind the wheel. That's an expression, right? Who's behind the wheel?
Right, exactly.
Nobody.
And we meant it that way.
On purpose.
Right.
On purpose. So let's check out what he says. How does that change the legal ramifications of a highway death?
Yeah, it's a hugely important question. The whole ethics behind this, the legal system behind it is a very important part of the story.
Because if I get on the road drunk, it's easy to point blame there legally. But if everyone is completely sober and they get in an autonomous vehicle and your software ends up killing them, holy shit! So those are banner headlines, and without anyone saying, "Well, look, people, 29,000 people didn't die this year."
Yeah.
No one pays attention to who doesn't die.
There's a fascinating analogy to that, and that's the history of vaccines. Flu vaccines were being developed as a good thing because people die from the flu, and but the producers of those vaccines were concerned that someone could have an allergic reaction to my vaccine and die, and I'm going to be held accountable for that. People were concerned about that flu vaccine because if they took it, they may have a reaction and die. But it's a good thing. If I get the flu shot, not only do I not get the flu, I'm not going to give it to you. So that's a public good. So the government stepped in and created what's called the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. 25 cents of every flu shot goes into this fund. And the liability protection for the manufacturer and for the person that gets injured from the vaccine comes from that fund. So I think it's a good thing if we go from 35,000 fatalities down to 1,000 fatalities. I would hate to think,
or even less, yeah.
or even less. I'd hate to think that manufacturers won't go down that road because they're concerned about your scenario, that the one time the software doesn't work, it causes someone to die. We're going to have to work through that as a society. You know what I think is going to happen, Neil? We'll learn past the 1,000. We'll understand those fatalities well enough so it'll go to 900 to 500, and maybe we'll get all the fatalities out of the system.
Got Alex Davies on video. Alex from Wired.com. You're the transportation guru. What's your actual title?
Actual title would be editor, but I think
Editor?
guru might fit.
We'll go with Guru.
Let's go with guru. Yeah.
Guru.
So, Alex, could you update us on? So we all know that there have been self-driving cars in test modes out there. Have there been any injuries or fatalities so far?
There's been one fatality so far in the United States that we know of, and that was in a Tesla self-driving car. So it's not the full autonomy that people like Uber and Google are chasing.
Mhm.
What Tesla has is called autopilot,
Right.
where it's a car that once you get on the highway or any place with lane lines that doesn't have intersections, the car can stay in its own lane and use radars to detect other cars and stay a safe distance from them. And about a year and a half ago now in Florida, a man was driving in his Tesla in autopilot mode when a truck was turning across the highway, and the Tesla didn't slow down at all and slammed into the truck, and it killed the occupant. And that caused something of a furor because people are like, this is the first self-driving car death, and there have been fears that once that happens, you're going to scare people away from the technology. That didn't really happen ultimately, and the US DOT investigators looked into the accident.
Department of Transportation, yeah.
Yeah, the Department of Transportation said, okay, we're going to look at this. They investigated the accident. They ultimately said that it wasn't Tesla's fault. Tesla still went back and tried to revamp its system.
But they said it wasn't Tesla's fault, if I recall correctly. They said it wasn't Tesla's fault because the car was not, the purpose of the program was not to have the car drive you. It was to aid in you driving the car. Therefore, you are still considered the driver of the car, which means that anything happens is ultimately your responsibility. So it's kind of a technicality like
Yes.
that. It's a little bit of a technicality because even though, in other words, the guy was misusing the car. Because he was in the back seat taking a nap or whatever,
Yeah, well, okay.
and he should have been driving it.
Let's get to how did this fail?
So Tesla never really revealed exactly what happened, but that version of the car used a combination of cameras and radars, and mostly it was really dependent on cameras also to detect obstacles in front of it that it would need to brake for. And what seemed to happen here was it was a very gray day, and it was a white truck. And the theory is that the Tesla's camera had trouble distinguishing that truck from the cloudy sky.
Mhm.
And so it didn't stop. So then Tesla went back, it revamped its self-driving system, it tweaked it to use more cameras, more radars,
Mhm.
and to hopefully offer a better blend of sensor technology.
Just when I thought we had discussed everything that matters with self-driving cars,
Yeah.
there's more.
Oh,
Yes. In my interview with Larry Burns, check it out. What happens to traffic in the world of an autonomous vehicle?
Yeah, traffic is a real important concern. The reason you have traffic congestion is there's more people who want to use the road than there is supply for the road. And because of that, the traffic backs up. It's a fancy term. It backs up non-linearly. You're going and the traffic's moving smoothly, and all of a sudden it's chaotic, and you get a traffic jam. With autonomous vehicles communicating with each other, optimally spacing and flowing together, you're going to be able to get much more throughput on those roads. When you get the crash out of the system, you're going to be able to get more throughput.
Every morning there's a crash blocking traffic.
Yeah, next time you're driving on an expressway, watch the people around you. The car next to you will pass you and get in front. A little later on, you'll pass that car and get in front of it. A little later on, someone else will pass both of you. You've gone 20 miles, you get to that point, and all three cars are at the same spot. So all that lane changing isn't adding a lot of value. Big over-the-road trucks can slow traffic down. We may be able to organize that freight traffic in a single lane with optimized spacing or headways between the trucks to improve aerodynamics and fuel economy,
So
reduce
every truck
crashes.
would basically draft off the previous truck.
Yeah, and then the parking in Manhattan, I've heard, I'm not sure it's true because I haven't validated this, that I've heard that 20% of the miles driven by Manhattan cars in Manhattan are people cruising around looking for a place to park.
Wow.
Plus you've got the street side parking. And we may be able to even organize our lives in such a way that those delivery trucks that block up a street or an
Entire lane.
avenue, maybe they can deliver at night. And because that just works with their overall business model, because it's autonomous perhaps. So I think there's a lot of ways to get a lot more people moving on the roads that already exist.
Alex, do you have a ranking of which cities in the country have the worst traffic?
Not offhand, but the last I saw, it was LA, San Francisco, New York. Atlanta has terrible traffic.
Terrible.
It's the usual suspects.
Yeah.
Do you guys calculate how much we lose in productivity by being in traffic? I think about that all the time. I'm sitting there waiting to get through a toll booth, and there's, it opens up to the, however many lanes,
Right.
and I'm looking at all these people, and I'm thinking we could be either with our family, with our kids, or at the job.
It's billions of dollars, and this is a number I'm pulling off the top of my head. I think the average Angelino spends dozens of hours stuck in traffic every year, and you think about the time they could be spending at home or the time they could be spending working. And if in a self-driving car, even if you can't get rid of the traffic right away, at least you could spend that time working, sleeping, or doing whatever you want.
Well, now I just felt now I'm against self-driving cars altogether now.
Why?
Because I got to work now.
You gotta work.
I got to sit in there and do my work.
That'll be expected of you, yeah.
Exactly.
Also, it might collapse the audiobook industry.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
you're right about that, because that's when people make use of that time to listen to their audiobooks.
That's right. That's right. And so, do you spend much time thinking about traffic flow and rubbernecking and all these other elements that urban planners have to think about?
Because a self-driving car would get rid of, it would eliminate rubbernecking.
There's no rubbernecking.
The car doesn't give a damn.
That's exactly right.
And as a matter of fact, you're mad at the car. You're like, well, no, slow down. I want to see that.
The car doesn't say, "Oh, blue flashing lights.
Right.
I want to have a closer look."
Exactly, right. And that's only because the car's not black. Yeah, blue flashing lights. Oh my God.
No, it'd be good if the self-driving car had a rubbernecking mode where it got closer to the accident so that you could see.
So you can see. Would you like to see the accident?
So, Alex, what's your take on the solution to traffic? Do you see that as fundamentally built into the solution that involves self-driving cars?
I think it is. And because, as you noted, things like human error, accidents, rubbernecking, all that stuff, that leads to a lot of traffic. But don't think that once you put one or two self-driving cars on the road, the problem's fixed. It could actually get worse in the short term when you have self-driving cars mixed in with humans, because you're still going to have enough human error to clog things up. And, you really need a much higher percentage market penetration to really start making the difference on highways. That stuff that Larry was talking about.
I just read this, and it may have been in Wired magazine, as a matter of fact, Alex, that in the beginning of self-driving cars being introduced onto the roadways, that the self-driving cars may be more frustrating to those passengers because they will defer to the regular drivers, because they'll look and say, "Oh, that guy's an a-hole. I gotta let that guy go." And so you'll be able to bully them.
Right. So here's how that actually came to pass. I think we might have read the same article.
Okay.
You come to a four-way stop sign.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the rule is the car to your right.
To the regular drivers, because they'll look and say, "Oh, that guy's an a-hole. I gotta let that guy."
the right of way, provided everybody stopped. But suppose you come to the four-way stop sign, but you do a California stop.
Right.
You slowed down, but you didn't actually stop.
Right.
And the self-driving car is just waiting for you to stop.
Right.
Because it knows it's moving 1 centimeter per hour.
Exactly.
It's still moving.
It's still moving. I got to wait for that guy to stop. Right.
So that we can then do the four-way stop sign rule.
Right.
And then
And the self-driving car is sitting there all day.
sitting there all day because it's getting bullied by. This is a scenario, right, Alex?
Yeah, it's a real scenario. This
Yeah.
is happening to Google engineers in the early days. They were just sitting there at four-way stops, and ultimately their solution was to program their car to be a little bit more human. So kind of
So what
imitate
now?
a human.
What does the
So-
car do now? It's like, hey, I'm driving over here. Hey, I'm driving over here. What's your...
They haven't started programming voices yet,
Okay.
but they will.
Those are
They
cars
will
at the
roll
Brooklyn
the car
factory.
Right.
The Brooklyn self-driving. Hey, I'm over here. I'm driving over here. So there's another issue that came up in my conversation with Larry, and let's find out what that is. Check it out. What are the people who just like to drive?
Yes. There are people who love to ride horses, equestrian, horse racing, and the horse industry hasn't gone away completely, and it's okay to ride horses, and it's going to be okay for people who want to drive. That's great. And no one's saying to you, you can't drive. That's the last thing I'd ever try to imply here, that we're going to impose on them something that they can't drive. A lot of these people like to drive on Highway 1 in California on a beautiful sunny day where there's no traffic and curvy mountain roads, and that is a thrill, the thrill of the road. But when they're stuck in Los Angeles traffic or Detroit traffic or New York City traffic, that is not enjoyable.
And presumably most people drive as a utility element of their life, not
Most of the
not
miles.
for entertainment.
Most of the miles are a utility
Yeah.
element, yes. So no one wants to take it away, just like no one took horses away.
Yeah. So Alex, I assume you agree with that. You can't just get rid of cars. People love their cars. People who love their cars love their cars.
People do. I think there's going to be a nice little boom in the racetrack business, somewhere where you can go, where you can safely drive as fast as you want. And I do think driving will never be illegal, but I do see a world in which cities say, "Hey, this is a self-driving zone. If you want to get in here in a car, that car has to be autonomous for safety and for traffic reasons."
Or park the car at the border. And
Right.
then you're going to do an Uberized
gotta use the
self-driving car
self-driving
coming
car.
through.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That sounds like an awful place to live. I'm sorry.
So
I love driving.
when we come back, we're going to get into like drones and shopping with autonomous delivery systems.
Oh my God, that just sounded like the most awesome shopping trip ever, where a drone goes with you to go shopping and then it drops a bomb on the mall. You don't mean that kind of drone.
Oh, yeah, no. Not the military drone.
Okay.
When Star Talk continues, more on self-driving cars and autonomous vehicles.
Stains can appear out of thin air. Or right before your eyes. And when they do, this is your show, and it's time for the Vanishing Act. Pick a stain, any stain. Now you see it, now you don't. We make OxyClean Max Force. You make it work. Work your magic. Any device that requires you to handle a bare cell is dangerous. When inserting and removing the cell from the device, the cell's insulating wrapper can be damaged. When the insulating wrapper is damaged, the negative can becomes exposed like this. And metal objects like a key or a coin can make a dangerous connection between the negative can and the positive cap. A connection like this could cause a short circuit, leading to a sudden release of high-temperature gas and flammable materials, which is called thermal runaway. Handling a bare cell places you at risk of severe injury from thermal runaway. Consumers should never handle a bare cell.
We're back on Star Talk. Today's topic, self-driving cars.
Yeah.
Automation.
Sorry, I had
Let's have Jetsons on the brain.
I know that's you self-driving cars. I just couldn't help it.
Chuck, we've got Alex on the line. Alex from Wired Magazine. We're featuring my interview with Larry Burns, who's an advisor to Google on autonomous vehicles, and he thinks deeply about every dimension of this question in ways I didn't even know people thought before, and it's great. I mean, it was a great conversation with him, and so we got into autonomous delivery vehicles.
Yeah.
And how that would change a whole other industry. Let's check it out.
It's about goods movement as well. You know, Domino's has created a robotic unit called Drew.
Domino's Pizza Delivery.
Domino's Pizza Delivery has created Drew, the Domino's robotic unit, 12-mile-an-hour vehicle that can operate and deliver hot and cold food to your home robotically. That's kind of neat. They think that's